Theory. Issue 2. Hell. Rain beating against the tin roof had long lulled the kids to sleep. Most of them were worn, ragged and tired from a day of adventures and chores, choreographed by their caretakers. There was one kid, however, who was still awake. His head of curly hair and frail frame were tucked neatly into bed at the start of the night. Now he'd wiggled himself loose from comfort and begun to explore the room from his bed. He'd always found himself awake long after his friends surrendered to rest. That was something he could never do that easily. Rest. He knew the sounds of the night, as they were normally amplified through the room. There was the way the high vaulted ceilings echoed the rain above their heads, or the cold of the room that encouraged each child to snatch their bedding closer, nestling warmth to their chest. But he didn't. The weight of curiosity was greater than that of the cold. His imagination began to spin up, generating playful images along the curtains of darkness hovering overhead. Sleep, hissed the voice from the shade. The boy ignored it, same as he always did. Or maybe you should come see what's happening, the voice enticed. The blankets pulled gently from the bed, causing the boy to sit up quickly. He searched the room, his ears being teased with the sound of scampering steps along the worn wooden floors. The door at the far end of the room opened slightly, revealing rays of warm light from the halls. The shadows seemed to ebb and undulate. They intensified in parts of the room, slowly consuming the boy's bed. A low hiss rattled the frame and ushered him to the floor. The shadows pushed forward again. The boy hurried across the floor and ran for the light. He looked back over his shoulder, squinting to study the darkness around his bed. A tuft of red danced in the air above his bed, followed slowly by a large set of horns and the skull of a horse. The skull tilted and dipped to the side, opening its mouth wide with a low growl. The boy hurried out and dared not to look back again. Good boy, the voice hissed again in the shadows. The grisly silhouette of the skull disappeared, being replaced by wet slapping against the floor. The boy was now too far down the hallway to hear this, though. Although he was often awake past his bedtime, he'd never before dared to venture out into the rest of the building at night. The halls, decorated with pictures of the kids, made the boy feel watched from all sides. He studied the unfamiliar faces of his friends with each step and listened for the subtle prodding from the mysterious voice in the shadows. This way, he was teased. Hurry, the voice urged. The boy's little feet crept quickly along the halls, and his eyes soon began peeking across the boundaries of each doorway he came to. Most of those rooms were darkened or closed off. His exploration soon brought him to the kitchen. Memories of conversations with the adults and the smells of food cooked with love and care now contested by a feeling of unease and timid examination. At the far end of the kitchen, shadows and chittering called the boy's attention to focus. A long tail slithered behind the counters and a gurgled hissing pushed against his ears from behind. Hurry down the hall, you're late. The boy crept forward, quickly bringing himself to the halls at the other end of the kitchen, catching the hint of light at the far end. Yes, the voice growled. The voice at his back called out to him, mixing with the voices now being heard from the room at the end of the hall. Be careful now. Stay unheard, unseen, warned the voice as it began to snicker and disappear. As the boy came to the door, he peered into the cracked door and allowed his eyes to adjust. He saw a group of men sitting around the room, talking to Mr. Pettiford. Mr. Pettiford was the man who ran the orphanage, the head caretaker and one of the boy's favorite mentors. He listened intently and pressed his head against the door, with his eyes glued to the scene in front of him. "I think we're being reasonable, Matt," grumbled a man on the left side of the room. He wore a straw hat that covered his eyes, casting a deep shadow over his face. His polo shirt was gently pressed and his khakis held a strong crease. "We just need you to sign on that line," he spoke again. Mr. Pettiford scoffed and tapped his pen to the desk. The puff of air from his mouth pushed the paper further away. "Just sign on the line," he murmured. Another man, out of view of the boy, laughed. He was probably wearing boots, because his steps seemed slow and heavy. "There's no other way to save your skin here," the other man blustered. "Go ahead. Put your name on that line." "So to save myself, I'd have to damn these children." Pettiford squeezed and rotated the pen in his grip as he spoke. "What kind of person would that make me?" The man in the polo shirt shrugged and smirked as he clasped his hands together and glared at Pettiford with a cold stare. "One who lives to see another day," he retorted. The other men laughed, and Pettiford slammed his hands against the desk. "It's funny to you?" The question ripped around the room with blazing scorn. "You say I just need to put my name on this line to save my own ass?" The man out of view stepped even closer. "Who do you think?" the man began. The paper was crumpled up and flung at that man. Its soft thump was heard before it fell to the ground. "I can't put my name on that line." His voice was trembling now, and his chair was quickly pushed back. "Putting my name on that line means that I'm killing those kids in the most cowardly way." His lip quivered, and tears now began to wet his cheek. "Signing my name on that line is simply a line I cannot cross." The men stood there in silence, softly studying each other, and allowing a sort of unspoken "what's next" into the room. The man in the polo shirt turned his palm up and twirled a finger and directed the man that was out of sight. The boy pressed his hand against the door, confused and hungry for what that finger twirl meant for the room. The silence continued. The boy watched as Mr. Pettiford seemed to shake in place, his breath and pulse whelming into something he couldn't seem to express. And then there was a loud bang. Mr. Pettiford fell back and grasped at the desk and the chair as he hit the floor under a mist of splashing red streaks. Pettiford's thickly rimmed glasses had fallen to the ground, pierced through the left lens and speckled violently. The boom of the shot filled the room, expanding violently and pushing through the shallow partition of the door and into the boy's chest. He was startled. The reality of what had just happened set in, and he stepped back from the door with trembling legs. The floor creaked, and the men inside the room called out, "Who's there?" The boy's eyes shot wide open and his body began to quiver. The voice came to him with a simple bit of advice as the men in the room came to the door. "Run, foolish boy," it whispered sternly. As the office door opened, there was nothing left in the halls but the sound of feet against the floor. The boy darted through the kitchen, tripping over something put in his path. He looked over his shoulder, catching a view of a man he hadn't seen yet. He was a big man. His steps shook the halls and rattled the pans on the hooks lining the ceiling. The boy scrambled to his feet and turned to the left, sprinting towards the day room and its surrounding offices. "To the door," commanded the voice. "Escape or you'll die." The boy slowed to a halt, pondering his flight. His friends were still asleep in their beds, and they were probably in just as much danger as him. "Be still now, boy," commanded the voice. "You've ruined it all. You'll die if I don't save you." The boy was arrested by a figure that sprang from the shadows. It grabbed him by the chin and hair, forcing him to look in the direction of the man chasing him. The figure lined itself up behind the boy and looked through his eyes, through the back of his head. Lavender sparks erupted from both of their eyes, and embers seemed to work their way into the boy's brain. His eyes burned in soft purple sparks and hypnotized the man, who now had run into the room with his breath ragged and strained. "We could kill them now," whispered the specter. "All of this could be over if you just let me take control." A long, twisted smile began to catch light from the shadows behind the boy. His heart and bones shook and rattled in place as if under the influence of some dark drum beat. The man at the other end of the room was perfectly lulled. His body was still frozen, helpless. The boy didn't know how the deed would be done, but he never doubted it could be finished. "Give me control," it commanded. Giving up control meant that this voice would do horrible things, and it would be his fault. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he cried. "I just want to leave." The room fell cold. The sound of the rain and storms outside drowned everything else out. The voice started humming in the boy's ear, building and changing in pitch until the humming dropped off into complete silence, leading to a sudden whisper. "Run." Behind the man, coming up the halls, were the rest of the guys from the room. They each had their hands full with gas cans being poured into the rooms until the smell of fuel filled the air and choked the boy. "Run," the voice repeated. The boy was petrified. He wanted to save his friends, but he was powerless. "Run away, boy," the voice commanded. It shook him. The voice and his words shook him and forced his knees to buckle. Behind the men, at the end of the hall, the man in the polo brought up a lighter from his pocket. In the other hand, he rolled a cigar between his fingers, kneading the tobacco in its wrapping. Taking the cigar between his lips with his face almost completely obscured by the hat, he lit it. The cigar produced a thick aromatic smoke that filled the halls and clouded everything. The boy could smell the cigar from the other end of the room. He coughed. His eyes moved, but his head was pulled back into focus by the ghost. "Stay steady, you little shit," it scolded. "You're useless now. There are too many for you to kill." The boy began crying. "I just want to help my friends. Please," the boy begged. "Help me save my friends." His tears glowed in purple light, and his eyes began to burn from being held open to keep the man hypnotized. "Pitiful boy," the voice chided. "The only option you have is saving your own skin." "No," the boy whimpered. "Grow up, Theory," the voice boomed. "You have nothing. You are nothing." The boy, Theory, sank into the helplessness of the situation. He saw the lighter's flame being cast to the side, flung out into the halls and giving life to a roaring blaze. Please help them, the boy cried and begged as he was pulled back and thrown from the orphanage and out into the streets. Theory's eyes, still glowing in lavender, were now filled with tears and rain. We have to save them, he screamed into the night. All of my friends are there, please. He pulled himself up and began to run back into the burning building. Something stopped him. A multitude of hands arrested him and stopped all of his motion. Behind him, there was a tall man, covered head to toe in a raggedy crimson drape. There's nothing you can do now but die with them. You're too weak and too helpless to save anyone. Theory kicked and screamed, having his mouth silenced by the ghouls at his back before he settled into his stance, soaked in rain, nostrils full of the smell of smoke. The city breathed in the billowing clouds, taking the ashes and spewing them back down onto the streets. There he watched his home and his friends consumed by a blazing inferno. He felt a fire come to life inside of him. The man in red sheltered him from the rain under his crimson cloak. Just as I have saved you, I shall now offer you power.